Hi, I'm Jenny, and I'm speaking from Life, the Basic Manual, and this is our third part in our series of Living with Anxiety. So I hope that this piece interests you as much as I found it interesting. I'm sort of banking on the fact that there's a little bit of a nerd in us all. This part I get a little bit nerdy about. But basically, this is the function of the brain, how the brain works, how the brain's made up, how it affects anxiety, and then how it affects our body. I think that as we can understand and learn more about ourselves as a whole, as one complete living organism that moves and thinks and functions, the more we can understand what's happening to us. So when it comes to the brain, we have a couple of different, what I would call, compartments. Two of them that I found most interesting are the cognitive part of the brain and the reptilian brain. So the cognitive part, I'm sure you can assume, has to do with thinking, has to do with our ability to learn, apply, develop new skills, the ability to analyze information, to comprehend things, etc. And the reptilian brain, which is similar to that of an animalistic type of brain, is where information is sent to our body that doesn't really need to be comprehended. So we have things like blinking and swallowing and, our heart rate, our body temperature. All of these things happen without us needing to think about it. So what we do with the cognitive brain and the reptilian brain is very different. And I want to focus a lot on this clip regarding the reptilian brain. Now, the reptilian brain is our primal basic function of the brain. And that's basically the part of the brain that's responsible for us surviving, for us living. And when we're in danger, our reptilian brain sort of takes over like a cloud in a storm and oversees our cognitive brain. So if you've ever experienced anxiety or anxiety attacks and you feel like you can't think straight and you're having all of these body reactions, but it doesn't really make sense to you, then this is why, because your reptilian brain has taken over. It senses danger and it senses fear, and it sort of becomes bigger than everything else. So I want you to think for just a second about what happens in the wild with animals, because most commonly we see the fight or flight symptom when it comes to an animal, when it's hunting its prey or when it's being hunted. So think of an animal who is out and about on a lovely stroll and suddenly they're being hunted and they're prey, and they become aware of this and they stop for a moment. And in that brief second, the brain is so incredible that it doesn't even need more than an instant, a quick moment to switch off from the cognitive brain to the reptilian brain. It's a survival mechanism. What's not happening is that this prey is thinking about solving puzzles and whether it left the stove on at home or it locked the keys in its car. It doesn't think about any of that stuff. It doesn't have the ability to think anymore because now suddenly its survival skills have stepped in. That prey may evacuate its bowels so it becomes lighter when it runs. The heart rate changes, the blood flow changes, and all that's left is this survival mechanism to run. It doesn't turn around and look and see what distance it's got between itself and its hunter. It just moves. And it dumps a load of adrenaline inside of the body so that it has the ability to move longer, faster, harder than normal. Now, if you've experienced anxiety or anxiety attacks, that may sound familiar to you. You may have found yourself experiencing anxiety and your heart feels faster, your hands feel clammy, you can't think straight, your muscles may feel tight. All of this is a natural animal function, not necessarily a human function, that allows us to save ourselves and survive in a very difficult, dangerous situation. Now, the problem with anxiety is sometimes we're not in danger. Sometimes we're just sitting at home having lovely dinner. Sometimes we're in a group of people in a big crowd. Sometimes we're in a business meeting and we may feel that danger come over us. And our reptilian brain doesn't really have a place. So what we need to figure out is exactly what's happening and exactly how we can resolve that. So now that we understand this function of the brain and we can understand what's happening, we can experience it, we can accept it, and then we can move on and figure out how we can heal ourselves, how we can find some compassion, and how we can move forward without having a full-on panic attack. Now, I want to mention again that as someone who's been ashamed and fearful and feels like there's something wrong with me, one of the gifts of having this information is knowing I'm not broken. There's not something fundamentally wrong with me or my brain. That in fact, those feelings of physical body reactions are simply a symptom of a completely normal, healthy brain function. So now that we have all this information, what are we going to do with it? How do we find some peace? How do we find some relief? So if you join me on clip number 4, which is our last clip, then we can go ahead and conclude everything, and hopefully I can share some tips, some tricks, and some personal experience that you may find helpful that you can take with you wherever you go.